Hey guys, Rise here bringing you the next and last set of SKT versus KT Rolster. Man, it has been an exciting matchup so far. Trading games left and right, some upsets, some exciting games. We see Flash losing one of his matches to Best of All People, who isn't playing all that great after Flash is on a 10-game win streak. We see Violet beating Hyuk, the Destroyer of 2009, using a Dark Archon. And now we're up to the final match, the ace match. And in this match, we have Fantasy versus Flash. Fantasy won his match. Flash lost his match. Are we gonna not match? Are we gonna see some upset in this game too? I would imagine Fantasy beating Flash would be an upset, but are we gonna see some head games because Flash is just lost? He doesn't look all that confident, which is rare for Flash. I mean, honestly, look at his face. He's like, man, I can't believe. I think he's still thinking about the last game that he lost, but the pressure's on him now. He's got to pull this one out for his team. At the same time, Fantasy won in spectacular fashion against Hoja. However, Hoja is not the same caliber player of Flash. So, what will happen here? I don't know. I'm exceptionally excited, extremely excited. All those other words that start with an excited, and really, I don't know what's going to happen. These two players are playing on Moon Glaive, one of the newer maps in the Pro League. I'll show it to you right here. And if we take a look at this map, it's kind of interesting. It reminds me of Medusa in a while, in a way, just because it's the three-player map. Three-player maps are notoriously hard to design correctly in order to really balance it very nicely. However, this map seems to be pretty well done. Should be a very interesting map with TVT because of all the ramps that they have and the features of the map lend itself to some interesting drop play. Containments are going to be very difficult to both break and create. And, you know, we may see just a lot of vulture play early on because of the way that the map plays. Also, depending on your positions, no matter where you are in the map, you're kind of close to each other. So, let's see what happens. That's enough on this map. I don't want to go too in detail with that. I'd rather actually go to the match and see where we see some diversions in the gameplay in terms of this mirror matchup. A TVT, this is the first mirror that we've actually seen in the entire set, which is kind of funny because lately all the games have been, not all the games, but a lot of games have been mirror matches. I mean, we've seen a lot more ZVZs, TVTs, PvPs than normal, especially ZVZs. Zergs have been played a lot more than they have in the past. Typically in every set, you know, we seem to have a ZVZ, it seems. But in this matchup, this is the first mirror, and I'm actually kind of excited about it. I think that a TVT finale is actually where TVTs work best, because that's when you see some of the most exciting play, in my opinion. Normally, I don't like commentating TVTs all that much, but after the action that we've seen and the fact that we haven't seen any mirrors so far, this is going to be a good one. And right away, we're seeing Flash go for a one-fact build as well as Fantasy at this point. So far, we're not seeing any divergences. They're both scouting the wrong position first, but it's not that big of a deal because there's only two positions that the other player can be in anyway, other than your own. And it looks like Flash is actually scouting. I guess he's a little bit behind scouting on Fantasy. Fantasy picking the slightly faster scout positioning, just based on the map again. And really, Fantasy sees that Fantasy saw the SCV of Flash, so he said, hey, Flash is following me. There's no way he's going back to his base already, so I know he's in the other position. And Flash not catching it until he sees that there's nothing blocking the ramp there. And now Fantasy may actually be able to block his ramp before Flash gets there, and Flash is blocking his ramp before Fantasy gets there. Now we're seeing a one-fact fast expand coming from Flash. I'd like to see what Fantasy is going, though. It looks like we're going to see the same exact build. Okay, so far we have a true mirror matchup. It looks like both players going for the fast expand route. And very curiously, both players, no units out on the field yet. And I guess I say that because I was expecting some early pressure from both players. Now, Fantasy was playing very creatively in this game against Hoja. I wonder if we'll see very similar tactics, meaning unorthodox tactics against Flash. Now, Flash played very safely in his game against Best. Too safely. Are we going to see that against Fantasy, or is he going to be more aggressive? Flash, I'd say, is most effective when he's aggressive because he can make use of his crazy APM and control that he has. And really, when you see Flash be aggressive, it's very rare that he loses the game because he keeps the other player off kilter the entire time. But the fact that he was trying to anticipate every single thing that Best did in the last game looked like he was just not playing to his normal gameplay. Now, Looks like he's going for an armory and a second factory now. I actually expect to see the same thing coming from Fantasy very shortly. Right now, Fantasy is going to build. Looks like he's going to build for a second factory as well. However, much further behind Flashes. So, slight diversion in timings at the very least. But I don't think it's going to be very important either way. But we haven't seen armory going down from Fantasy quite yet. So, first diversion, early armory coming from Flash, or earlier armory coming from Flash. And be interesting to see if that comes into effect later on. Now, this map is cool because the expansion actually has a back door that you can do some damage in. And we saw that in the last game that I commentated on this map. It was a TVZ, I think it was Light versus Effort, yeah. And in that game, Effort made a lot of use with lurkers going around the back door. Same thing can be said for Terran players. They can most certainly make some use of that back door, whether it's with vultures or surprise tanks with a drop or who knows. So early on, it looks like both players still just going to macro up. We are seeing an academy coming down for Fantasy. So Fantasy wants to know what's going on in Flash's base, and I like this. He's going for the early information advantage here, whereas Flash is being aggressive, and I like this from Flash. So I think both players playing the styles that fits them best. And really very evenly in troop count here as well, although a Vulture added to the unit count, as well as a Goliath at this point for Flash. But this is going to be scouted by Fantasy. So Fantasy has the information. He knows what's going on, and both players not really going to be able to do much. A couple of Vultures joining the fight, and some Spider Mines going down. However, they're going up against a group of units that will be able to take Spider Mines down very easily, as long as Flash is moving around with a move. If he's moving around with the move command, he could be in trouble. However, I think that he'll be okay because it's Flash. All right, so Comsat going down for Fantasy at this time. He's going to be able to get some scouting information, see what's going on in the base of Flash. However, I think that he already has a pretty good idea of what's going on, considering that he's seen the Goliaths out already. So he knows that there's an armory out there. He's got to know that there's at least two factories. Both players putting down their third factories. It looks like they're diverging back together. Not diverging, converging back together on their builds, with the exception of their unit composition. Now, it'll be interesting to see, though, if these mines are effective, because, again, A-moving units will be able to take that out fairly easily, in my opinion, because Goliaths and tanks together can take out mines pretty quickly. And now we're starting to see the beginnings of contains. However, Flash's units are much closer together in his contain than the contain that we see of Fantasy. And that could be good and bad. Depending on Splash, how it happens, he can take more damage. However, at the same time, he's going to do more damage because he'll do 2 shots at once like that, or 3 even. And now, it looks like he's already going to take out a couple of units early on. However, not in the range of the tanks. And look at this. He's actually got a burning barracks. He's got to be careful about that. If that goes down, he's going to have to rebuild that, and that's going to delay any more factories coming from him. However, it's not going to be that big of a deal because I would expect them to be making more factories sooner than later. But Fantasy is actually the player to be more aggressive in that respect, and he is going to repair that no problem. So Fantasy now going on to 5 factories. Flash still on 3, finally getting Comsat at this point. However, he's ahead in the upgrades. So we'll have to see how this plays out, because really, you know, one can be better than the other, but it's hard to say which. It all depends on what you do with them. It depends on the altercations that happen. It depends on who is able to take better advantage of pushing tanks and getting early damage out sooner. Looks like Fantasy is now going for a second base sooner than Flash is. So Fantasy being very aggressive. That's not true. Flash is right there behind him. He is keeping up with bases after all. And it's amazing to see how even this match is so far. Only now is an armory going down for Fantasy, though. So he is going to be behind on those upgrades, which could play a role as the game progresses. However, that Marine's going to see all those mines over there. So Flash is now aware of all the mines out on the field. However, I don't know what those mines are going to play later on. What type of role they're going to play later on, because really, it's hard to say. You know, he may be aware of them, but he may forget about them. He may happen to move units haphazardly through them. He'll have to make a mental note, basically, in order to avoid that. So this TVT is a very macro-intensive TVT. We're seeing both players building up, trying to set up the contain. The map is being divided in half, and it looks like Flash is getting ready for some dropship play, if not Wraith spotting and Wraith harassment. Because there haven't been any Goliaths out, it could be a good idea to actually go Wraiths rather than going dropships right off the bat. So we'll have to see what he decides to go. Fantasy, on the other hand, is just